I'm very excited to move to our fireside chat now. And since we have Sudakshana with us today, let's hear from the horse's mouth on why. Why are you all putting in so much time, money, effort into actually promoting this conversation in the workplace?
Yeah, in your question lies the answer. The fact that we are sitting here and talking about diversity, and we have this huge conclave with so many people from different industries joining, which means that it requires a dialogue. It requires more than a dialogue. It requires structures, frameworks where people at the last mile really recognize that and I'm only talking about gender right now, that the gender balance has not been balanced so far. So there needs a huge movement of people, not only people who are in the corporate to influence their circles, but to take it, and that's what I think Aditi was mentioning, like take it to the conversations to the family, friends, grandparents, neighbors, whoever. Like we are so easy about talking, say about films or entertainment or fashion, but how often in our own circles do we really talk about what are we doing towards creating a more inclusive world? Unless it has a personal bearing of sorts in some way in our lives, seldom do we converse about these things. And that's the reason perhaps why we require this beautiful banquet, lovely entrepreneur like yourself to bring people together to drive a movement like this.
But Sudakshana, at the end of the day, businesses are there for business reasons, right? What do you feel? So while we absolutely understand the societal imperative of driving diversity, can you share a little bit with us about why is it important for businesses to get involved?
First of all, the whole thing about diversity is at the core of nature, in everything, including organizations. The fact that it has been at the back burner for so long, that in itself seems like a point of injustice that we are starting with. So it has to come as a conversation, it has to come in form of policies. So if you look at the McKinsey report, I think a couple of years ago, they said that an organization which has better gender balance has better financials. So there is already a research report available from a data perspective, but even if you don't look at data for a little while and you just look at what does a workplace look like when it has representation from different kinds of people, gender, abilities, thoughts, ethnicity, skills, competencies. I mean, there's two of us here. I'm working in an organization, you've created an organization, that's diversity by itself. And why is it then so difficult for organizations to recognize that we have large number of people coming from different places? They come with different experiences, thereby they come with different thought processes. They come with different skills, they come with different competencies. So why should gender only be taken out and say, oh, we are going to hire more women? What if we change the narrative for the organizations and said, we're going to hire different people? Now, one of those differences could be gender. It could be anything. So I'm glad that world over, the spectrum of diversity is really broadened now. And it's thankfully not just limited to women. But since we're talking about it's accelerate her, so let's talk about women then.
So then tell me, what is it that you feel are holding women back? And if we were to increase more gender diversity in workplaces, what is it that you feel are the foundational elements to be able to do that?
See, sometimes I feel women themselves are the biggest champions and also sometimes the biggest, what's the right word for it?
Critics?
Critics, yeah. Hindrances also maybe. So sometimes we are very convenient. We want everything. But when it comes to stay back at work, say after 6:30, 7 o'clock because the work demands, then we are very comfortably, then we switch to other roles and say, no, I can't because I need to go home and, I need to attend to my other commitments. Now, commitments are the same for the guy also. It's just that societally we have never recognized their commitments. So it's a very comfortable assumption that they will stay back, but I will leave home office at a certain time. Now, I can do it because my employer is very, very considerate. My employer is sensitive. My employer ticks all the boxes. But the question that I need to ask myself is, do I tick all the boxes? So I think that's an important one. So sometimes women themselves can be. By the same time, it's also true that lives of women are far more complex than the lives of men. Most of the time, you'll see women are the primary caregiver. Whether it's taking care of parents, taking care of children, taking care of family, they are the primary caregiver. So obviously, somewhere this has to be balanced. Now, organizations that create an ecosystem where if somebody has to stay late, does not have to feel guilty. I think those are the organizations that stand out when it comes to creating an equitable workplace. And why today is this? Because for so many years, we have not recognized the contribution that women bring to the organization. You know, I don't know whether, of course, you all are much younger, but there was a time back then where we would say reception है ना, हाँ तो वो लड़की को ले लो. So, secretary है लड़की को. That's how people would think. But
and by the way, that receptionist and the secretary was also staying back along with the bosses.
they would. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. So of course, there's a huge ground that has been traversed. Like, you know, today the debate today is not about the receptionist or the secretary. The debate is about the board. Like, how do people make sure that the board is more gender balanced and not just what is being mandated by the Companies Act and stuff, but will a board which has more gender balanced, will that board be more efficient and more effective? Yesterday we were at an event, similar event on DEI, and somebody very, very senior said a very beautiful thing. Said that, you know, people with different abilities, when you get them a seat on the table, they can add so much of value to the policy and the creative or the creation that an organization is doing. Because we, at best, can probably have that echo that view from a distance. But when you have a person with a certain special ability sitting on the table discussing, they will tell you what exactly are the issues that they face in a workplace. Or they face in society, we'll leave it for the time being, what they face in the workplace. Now that is recognition of diversity. It's not a favor that we are doing as an organization. So as an organization, it's important to recognize, to answer your question, like what are some of the enablers and what works? Sometimes we ourselves limit ourselves and we are comfortable playing small. So maybe if we change that lens and didn't play small and used what we think is our constraint as our strength, things can really change.
Well, I think that's a beautiful thought, that first of all, turning crises into opportunities, right? I mean, we are right now looking at a crisis of, you know, workplace talent when it comes to gender diversity. How do we make that into an opportunity, right? But now let's move the conversation a little bit, Sudakshana, from diversity to inclusion. You know, one of my favorite quotes is diversity is like being invited to a party and inclusion is being asked to dance. How do you feel, you know, organizations need to change when it comes to having inclusive policies in the workplace?
So, you know, for the longest time, we've been saying that, okay, diversity is a transformation of mind. Because only when we create space is when we start to recognize that the world has different people and so does an organization. But thank you for saying about inclusion, because one of my colleagues very beautifully says that if diversity is transformation of mind, inclusion is space in the heart, or a knock on the heart. I can still recognize diversity. But for me to give it gravity, enough gravity for it to be visible, is when I need to really create inclusion. And that can only happen when each one of us in our circle of influence create those systems and policies to make sure that we're truly creating an inclusive workplace where it's fair, just for everyone. Okay, let me give you an example. You know, when we hire people with different abilities, it's an unconscious bias to say, नहीं इनसे तो ये वाला काम नहीं होगा, इनके लिए हम ये कर देते हैं. Who are we to make that decision? So I think first step towards inclusion is to empower those people to make the decision about what they want. We can make a D&I policy saying that our company will have 25% gender, 10% with special abilities, 5% ethnicity, all of that we can do. But inclusion, to really be able to create an inclusive workplace, we have to empower each of these cohorts to decide what they want. For all you know, they themselves will come back and say, okay, you know what, this is something that we can't do, but we can do this. But the decision has to be theirs. The decision can't be ours. And when I say ours, is that maybe we are more in numbers, so we think the world belongs to us. But we need to shed that sense of entitlement. We're not entitled to define the world that we want or the organization that we want. To be inclusive, we have to let everybody define the kind of workplace that they want. So that each of us who come from different places, different abilities, thoughts, process, can truly thrive. And it's not esoteric, Neha. It's possible.
Can you share like a personal experience where, there was a particular challenge, or that you found a solution, or that you found it worth the kind of time, money and effort it took to make sure that diverse talent pools were succeeding in your workplace?
So I remember one of our business leaders, progressive business leader, he wanted to create a certain desk of call center professionals. And he said, you know what, this really does not require anyone to be 100% visually able. We can have people who are visually impaired to man this desk, or woman this desk. So we hired a couple of people, and it was a learning experience, because initially, we didn't realize how to make use of them. Because we realized that the gap was not about them coming at the workplace, the gap was that they needed a certain software to be able to do their work. But how illiterate we were to be able to deal with people with different abilities, that we didn't know about this. But good, that's why I said he's a progressive business leader. He made sure that he moved things around in the organization, he pulled strings and got that software implemented immediately, and the people started to be productive. Now, there were two things here. One could have been that, who's going to wait? Yeah, just drop it, because business needs to happen. And I can't wait, my business can't wait just because you want a diversity agenda to be furthered. So, abhi chhod do, let's get somebody else. But thankfully, that business leader was also champion of DE&I. So he said, we'll wait and let this get done. So it's an experiment that went well. But the experiment had 100% chance of not working also. And there are ample incidents like that as well. The other thing which is most important, and some of you who are in HR, and this is also a learning that we've had, last year, or last to last year, we went really aggressive about hiring people with different abilities, and the team had done a fairly good job of it. But we saw that people were leaving, because we realized that social ecosystem within an organization is most important. So we've hired them. But tell me, and I also realized, it, personal learning also, Neha, that I also realized that we've hired them, but do I know how to greet them? Do I know that if they need something, how do I anticipate their needs? How do I make sure that as an organization, when I say I means the organization, how as an organization do we make sure that we say we are proactive about employee practices. How are we proactive about employee practices of those people whose needs are different from those of the policymakers? So I'm going to connect the dot what I said a little while ago, that when we give a seat on the table for those people, these are the gaps that they can help us plug. It's very important to have a representation in the leadership of people from these different cohorts. Just going back and stitching it. So we have to make sure that there's a social ecosystem that we create within our organization, so they don't feel reclusive, they don't have anyone to socially interact with in an organization. I remember a few years ago in a study, I don't know whether it's a Gallup study or which other study, which said that almost 73% of employees stay in an organization when they feel that they have an informal social network in the organization. Now, how are we creating that informal social network for people who are different than us in their thoughts, abilities, skills? What did COVID show us? There's so many people who came from smaller cities. They couldn't sustain themselves in bigger cities, and they went back. Because their struggles are different. Some of us who've moved from other cities and have come to Bombay to work, we need people to share. Like, we were not the ones who used to traveling in local train. So some people can just basically say, "Kya hai yaar, train mein chad ke chale jao." But for them, it's not that difficult. But for people who are not from the city, that may be a daunting task. Now, if we are sensitive about these things, recognizing that our immediate environment is a mix of different people, thereby requires a different sort of responses to be, so that they feel included. That's when totally inclusivity will happen. And then, of course, the organization need to put process and policies. But tell me, Neha, process and policies can create a feeling of inclusivity in any form.
Well, they actually can, right? Because if you think about it, policies right now, processes right now, I mean, the average working person in an organization has been a man. You know, so processes, policies, rules of the game, how do you network? Do you network in bathrooms and on the golf course? They've all been built for men, by men, of men, because the average working person was a man. Like, you can't fault them for it. Now, if we want to change that average, then we have to relook at all these rules.
Yes.
There's a lot of talk in companies that are happening right now when it comes to different kind of leave policies, right? When it comes to, of course, maternity leave, which hopefully will one day will become parental leave. They're talking about menstrual leave. They're talking about child care policies, etc. All of this are coming into the place because we are reimagining what that average working person can look like,
That's true. So, one of the very successful initiatives that HDFC ERGO has, and I'm not saying this is because I'm sitting here, but I truly believe that it's a good one, is how do we replace, or not replace, but create a parallel, informal, social platform for women to come together. See, a lot of time men go on for chai, or they go for cigarette breaks and stuff. So what do women do? Like, when do they get to bond with other women? As it is, the clock is ticking because they have to finish their work and, to go home at a certain time. So how can organizations somewhere support something like this? So what we created was, of course, it was virtual. It's a virtual platform where we bring few women together, where they can share about what's going on with their family, what's the role that they're playing as a caregiver, what's happening with their children. So it's in an informal setting. It's like as if you were on a chai break. And literally we used to say that, bring your cup of tea or bring your cup of coffee and then let's just chat. So similar cohort meeting groups for different cohorts can really be helpful. And in this case for women, because they don't usually, as women, we're not usually very kind to taking breaks from our day's work. Usually, typically we are okay, get to work, finish work, have lunch, come back, finish work and go home. So something like these can be really useful. A small step, but it's significant, and we've seen a lot of positive responses from our women colleagues when they come for these kind of catch-ups.
No, that's great to know. In fact, that's something we've been seeing deeply at Herky as well, and we've seen with companies which have actually created these formal networks also for women to be able to really relate to each other and share with each other. It does wonders when it comes to retention and advancement. Before we conclude our discussions, Lakshana, I would love to see if there were a couple of questions from the audience. We have mics floating around. If you would like to ask a question, please just raise your hand. Please don't be shy. Okay, there is one. And please introduce yourself also.
Hi, good morning. I'm Suranjana from Dunnhumby. My question is, what are the kind of challenges you face while implementing? So, creating policies is one thing, but when you actually execute and implement them, what are the kind of challenges that you face while, during implementation or post-implementation maybe?
Hi, thank you for asking the question. So the very, very common challenge, and we've also faced the same, is that, now this diversity policy has come and we have to hire more women. So that's the first barrier. So we also face this similar from the business manager saying that, now we have to hire more women. Why? अरे वो maternity पे चल जाएंगे, उनको घर जल्दी जाना होता है, normal things. But interestingly, when we create more success stories around women who've come in the teams which were earlier only men team, and how that team composition has changed. So we started our journey with same challenge, saying, we have to now hire more women because it is mandated. From there to last year, I remember we were doing some kind of a moderation exercise, and people said, some of the same managers came back and said that, you know what, I think the team is better when it is more gender balanced. Now this journey is important because that's creating moment of truth. But the challenges are similar. Like why women? Now we have to hire more women. What if, they want to take leave and what if that doesn't work? So all kinds of things are there. But what is important is to be able to navigate through that. So we said, okay, fine, if there's a resistance that you don't want to hire more women, let's create, will this work? We said, all being equal, let's hire a woman candidate. Does that work? It's difficult to challenge this because I'm not saying that you compromise on merit and you hire a woman employee. We're not saying that. We're saying all being equal. If you have a male candidate and a woman candidate, because our gender balance ratios are so low, let's improve that. But improve it without compromising on meritocracy. That landed well. I said, okay, then it is fine. And that's when, so we moved from some like early teens in 3 years ago to about late 20s now in the diversity. And we're a large organization, relatively large organization. That's happened because of these subtle changes in narrative, subtle changes in policies, and creating moments of truth and talking about success stories.
Great. Thank you so much, Sudakshana. And here's to reaching a 50-50 in the workplace soon. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.